Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tracy Olson. Let me clarify right now. I'm not a geologist, I'm not an astrophysicist, nor am I really into the earth sciences. I'm just a fellow earthling here tonight, to talk to you about the earth being round, as opposed to flat. When thinking about this topic, I remember a recent work trip to the West Coast. It was 8 p.m. or so Pacific time, and the sun was just starting to set. I was sitting in my hotel, and from my window, I was looking toward the east. I had been traveling a lot, so I was missing my family very much. However, when I looked down into the streets below, there was still a lot of activity, from people walking their dogs, moms getting in their, night run with their strollers, and just cars zooming about. But I knew back home in New Jersey, it was dark, the street lights were on, and my family was all settled in for the night. Now, I will say, I was not missing them very much the next morning when it was 5:30 a.m. my time, Pacific time, and 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. They were blowing up my phone in a group text message, and for any mother, you can understand or empathize with me here that it was because somebody couldn't find something and needed mom to tell them where it was. However, my point is that this event for me actually reinforces the notion that the earth is indeed round. So not everyone has that same belief though. Flat earthers, as they are known, are a small group of individuals who claim that the Earth's roundness is a conspiracy and that our planet's true shape is being withheld from us. One theory is that our planet is actually a disk and that gravity is just this grand illusion that we have. A Life Science article from May of 2017 cites the leading flat earther theory embraces the Earth as a disk, with the Arctic Circle in the center and the Antarctica as a 150-foot wall of ice around the rim. Now, in addition to that, they believe that NASA employees are guards that guard against this ice wall to prevent people from climbing over and falling off. Furthermore, they dispel the notion of day and night cycles and believe in an invisible anti-moon that obscures our moon from making our days and nights. Furthermore, they believe that pictures of our globe are photoshopped. GPS devices are arranged to make pilots think they're flying in straight lines when they're actually flying in circles above the disk. They have not yet been able to reveal what the exact motive behind the conspiracy is, but it is believed that it's rooted in financials. So in a nutshell, they believe it would logically cost less to fake a space program than to actually have one. So those who are part of the conspiracy are just profiting from the funding of NASA. But yet, this same group recognizes that the moon is round. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson said it best. So Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the Sun are all spheres. But they think the Earth is flat. Something just doesn't square up, right? He credits only two things to the rise in the flat Earth theories: the right to free speech and a failed education system. So who discovered that the Earth was indeed round? Let's go back to our education system and our history books, where Christopher Columbus is credited in 1492 with proving the Earth was round. Now, however, it was actually discovered over 2,000 years ago, long before we mastered space exploration, by the ancient Greeks, specifically the Greek philosopher whom we all probably have heard of, Aristotle. In Aristotle's book, on the heavens, he talks about how the observation of the stars make it evident that the earth is circular. In other words, you see two different sets of stars depending on where you are. Greek thinker, astronomer, and mathematician Eratosthenes took it one step further. He noted that when the sun was directly overhead at noon in one city, it was not as high in another city. With some sticks and a little trigonometry, he was able to calculate the circumference of the earth. Ever since then, the fact the earth is round has been common knowledge among those who are educated. To further drive home my point, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan circumvented the earth. He didn't fall off any edge. Now, besides looking at other planets, varying constellations, the sticks and shadows method, how do we know the earth is round? Well, for one, photographic images like this one. In 1946, we were given the first ever pictures of our planet from space. But it was in 1960 that we saw a glimpse of the Earth from the moon, which gained the nickname Earthrise. The most influential and well-known image in human history was taken of the Earth in 1972 by the crew of the Apollo 17, and they labeled it the Blue Marble. Let us take into account now the oceans, ships, and the horizon. This might be one of my favorite, as I consider myself somewhat of a thalassophile. While on water or strolling down the beach, stare off into the horizon. Now, notice approaching ships just don't appear, right? The Earth's not flat. If it were flat, they would just appear. However, the approaching ships almost emerge as if they're being born. Hence, the Earth is round. As Ben Nye the Science Guy points out, that if the Earth were flat, you'd be able to see further. Noting when out at sea on a boat or a ship, you can't see infinitely far. He also drives home his point with an argument that he has personally been to Vancouver, British Columbia. And you cannot see Vancouver from Boise, Idaho, let alone New York or Toronto. And lastly, the existence of time zones. To my point earlier, I was in Southern California, it was still light, but for my family in New Jersey, it was dark. This can only be explained if the world is round and rotating. As pictured here, at a certain point when the sun is shining on one point of the earth, it is dark on the opposite side. Thus the reason for time differences. If the earth was flat, the sun would be more like a spotlight and be very directional. In conclusion, for flat earthers, well, I hope it's just a fad and it falls flat. Just because you can walk on the planet's surface and it looks and feels flat doesn't mean that it is. What has me really shaking my head is an article by Forbes magazine. It cites a poll done in February of this year. The results show that only 66% of people between the ages of 18 and 24 believe and are convinced that the earth is round. For those that don't believe, well, the evidence is overwhelming. From photographic evidence to the many branches of scientists and scientific research, as well as our own senses, the earth is round. I am confident that the earth is round. And from my own recent Facebook poll, 99% of my friends also accept this to be true. Maybe to Neil deGrasse Tyson's point, flat earthers just need a little more education. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be with you tonight, and I thank you for your time. The last thing I want to leave you with is that the Earth isn't exactly round either. It's what's actually known as an oblate spheroid. It bulges a little at the equator and it's squashed a little at the poles. Thank you again. Good night.